Hello class! The subject of this video is what a director does. For those new to theater, this could be a little bit of a confusing thing, so I hope I can shed some light on this topic for you today. Okay, so the director is the creative head of the production. What is a director? The director is the creative head of the production. Gee, I wonder if that might show up on a quiz or an exam perhaps in the future. Anyway, so what does that mean? This means that every creative decision about this specific production of the play falls under his or her responsibility, okay? So ticket sales are not the director's business. Raising money is not the director's business. Making sure actors have their lines memorized is not the director's business. Although, depending on the situation, some directors might handle all of that, okay? Let's talk about what a director's job is, assuming there is no crossover with other jobs, and the director of the show gets to just direct and do nothing else, okay? So, first, the director develops a vision for the play. Sometimes this is called director's concept, okay? But what it really means is that the director develops an interpretation of the script or performance piece, okay? Assuming the play is already written and established, the director must figure out his or her take on it, considering not only what it means to the director, but also considering what it will mean to the audience. I had to make this consideration when I directed a play called Defying Gravity, which was about the Challenger space shuttle disaster. Our target audience was actually space enthusiasts and aerospace industry professionals. And as much as I loved that the play asked hard questions, philosophical questions, it was really important to remain very reverent and respectful to those who would be attending the show, okay? Especially since the subject of the play were people who gave their lives for the space program. So to me, it was very important that we remain respectful of that. Okay, another part of developing the interpretation is to develop what the director feels is the spine of the play, okay? The most important action, theme, emotion. Then choices regarding style must be made. The first style choice to be made is whether or not a show could be deemed realistic or otherwise. The choice is not always prescribed in the script. Shakespeare has been done both ways. Okay, attention to detail is important whether a play is stylized or realistic, but the details are often drastically different. The details applied in a realistic play are strongly rooted in research, and the designers and directors adhere strictly to the way things occur in real life, okay? In a stylized play, the choices are also supported by research, but the designers and the directors choose the research topic based on their interpretation of the play, okay? So, for example, for the hit stage adaptation of The Lion King by director Julie Taymor, she used puppetry techniques from Japanese kabuki theater, believe it or not. This has absolutely nothing to do with the animal kingdom in Africa, but it worked exceptionally well with that play, with that production. One thing I do want to make sure that you're catching on to is the fact that the artistic process is all about making choices, okay? You do your research, you learn your technique, then you make choices and you stick with them. It's a little like writing a research paper. You write your thesis based on an opinion, even if you're not totally convinced you're right. It's a leap of faith, right? Then you go about writing your paper, gathering research to support the opinion, applying principles, we call that technique, And hopefully by the end of the paper, you've developed a good argument that even you can believe. Well, similarly, by opening night, if everyone has stayed consistent to the director's interpretation, the play will be as compelling, hopefully more so, than a well-written term paper. Okay, so this brings us to our next point. It is the director's responsibility to keep all creative aspects of a production unified, okay? So if an actor, designer, or anyone else decides they don't like the director's choices and chooses to just do their own thing, they put the whole production at risk. Here's an example, okay? A director decides one aspect of the style is that this show is going to be blue, right? Okay, we choose blue, great color. All kinds of shades of blue. If a costume designer hates blue and decides to put her actors in red, the mood of the show that the director was working toward is going to be ruined, right? The show will be disjointed and lack unity. So it's important that everyone on the production gets behind the director's vision, even if you don't like blue. In my own directing experience, I confess, I've gotten myself in trouble a couple of times because I didn't have a well thought out vision when it comes to the set design. That's not my strong suit. Many of the shows I've directed have not had the budget to hire a set designer, so the creative choices about the set fell to me. This is definitely one of my weaknesses as a director, and when I didn't communicate clearly what I wanted in terms of the set, because I hadn't thought it through myself, some other very productive and well-meaning individual would usually take over, and their idea of the set was just not creatively consistent with the rest of the play. And that was a big mess that I got myself into, and it wasn't easy to untangle. What's worse is that by then it's also kind of an interpersonal mess with hurt feelings and hurt egos involved. So, live and learn. Don't worry, all is well now. Okay, so let's talk about new plays. When the play is new, the director needs to consult with the playwright to craft the best draft for the production. So depending on the dynamics of the production, the balance of power here may be questionable, okay? If the playwright is new and the director is established, it may be that the director calls the shots on a script. In fact, this is usually how it is done on a movie set, okay? Because on a movie set, the director is kind of considered, in most cases, more important than the writer. Usually, not always. But anyway, and in that case, it gets written to the director's liking, right? If the situation is the other way around, because in the theater, usually the writer does kind of take precedent over the director, usually, not always. So if the situation is the other way around, the playwright may actually have more creative control than the director and get very little input from him or her at all. A great example of this would be Hamilton. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a Tony Award winner, a superstar in his own right. He wrote it and starred in it. I'm not sure who directed that original production, but, a very accomplished director. And yet in that production, definitely Lin-Manuel called the shots because he was kind of more important, more VIP, if you will. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the design team. Get your handout out titled Organizational Structure of a Theater Company. We're not starting at the top, all right? Find the bubble with directors of individual shows on it and have that ready to take some notes, okay? All the creative positions are in blue, and the arrows indicate who reports to whom, okay? So the next rung down in the creative ladder are the designers. The designers are very important people on the creative team. They report to the director. So this includes the scenic designer, the costume designer, lighting and sound designers, and the prop master and mistress, who kind of considered part of the scenic design team. Anyway, so all of those roles are very creative positions with a lot of authority on a production, okay? The scenic designer is very important. We'll talk more about this job later in the semester. The scenic designer usually starts his or her work at the same time as the director, okay? The designer and director may consult with one another about how they interpret the play. A good director will want to get the input of the rest of the creative team. But ultimately, it is the director's job to communicate his or her vision to the scenic designer, and it's the designer's job to develop a design that works within that concept, okay? On your handout, I should have created an arrow from the scenic designer to the prop master, and I think I also neglected to put the important roles of lighting designer and sound designer on the handout, so my apologies. Those areas often fall under the creative control of the scenic designer, but again, ultimately, the creative concept for these choices these designers make come from the director. The director is what? The creative head of the production. Remember that. Okay, quick story. I once did a project in grad school that was never produced, but as a director, I chose to make this play a very well-researched, realistic, styled piece, okay? It was important to me that the actors wear hard-soled shoes and that the floor was hard and echoey when they walked. In addition, I wanted the female actors to wear red petticoats underneath their skirts, but I wanted the rest of the colors to be very drab and dull. I chose to make the red symbolize death, and this choice came from some cultural traditions that I had learned about in my research. Okay, the play takes place in Ireland, so that's why I wanted everything to be kind of drab and dull, because it was a very sad piece, a tragedy taking place in Ireland, and the red symbolized their passion and their grief in regards to death. So the real-life women from the Aran Islands, which is the small island that this play took place on, off the coast of Ireland, these women actually would wear red petticoats and use them as part of their funeral traditions, believe it or not. So when I learned that in my research, I knew that that would be a very dynamic, dramatic, wonderful choice for a play. So you can see how my research as the director led to specific choices that the scenic designer, sound designer, and costume designer would have to make. Other choices, such as what the set would actually look like and what other clothes the actors would wear, those are left up to the designer. But it would all have to fit within the vision that the director had, okay? Someday I would like to direct that play. It's called Riders to the Sea by William Inge, and it is a short piece if anyone wants to pick it up someday. I believe it is in files in the play text folder. And it is also on the play options list for your play proposal project. So some of you may want to choose that one later in the semester. So considering all that, guess what? The director's job isn't over, because I haven't even begun to talk about actors and acting yet. And that is a really important part of a director's job. So we'll talk more about that in upcoming modules. So thank you for joining me on this video on what a director does. See you on the boards.